Welcome to another new episode of Arabology Online, and as promised, I have with me through Zoom poet Jawdat Haydar's own daughter, who is joining us all the way from Lebanon. May I say marhaba wa ahlan wa sahlan, Madame Shahina Osseiran.
Thank you.
You're in Lebanon right now.
Yes, in Lebanon, inside them.
How is Lebanon these days? I know you guys are going through a lot, but how are you coping? Inshallah, منيح.
We are trying to cope, but we are really very sad about what is happening.
أكيد. Because I think that this is one of the ways to cope with what is going on is really through poetry and through music and through Lebanese cultural productions, old and new. And this is part of why I've been so excited about talking with you today, because in so many ways, your late father's poetry can be applied to current events in Lebanon, although as we know, he passed away, but it's almost prophetic. Do you feel that your dad had this problematic, but not problematic, but did you feel he had this complicated relationship with Lebanon?
I think that Jawdat Haydar, my dad, he saw and experienced all the phenomenal changes in the 20th century. And he was able to adapt, adopt, ponder, and give us this experience in live poetry.
Which lives on, I think. When did your father pass away, Madame Shahina?
2005. Sorry, 2006.
In 2006?
14 years ago.
Wow, time sure flies. But and he was 101 when he passed. Allah yarhamu, which may explain the title of his last published book, I think, right? Which is called, of course, 101 Selected Poems. A beautiful collection that you so kindly sent us here at Stanford last year, and which we continue to use. Was this his last or published collection?
This was his last published collection, and it was translated into other languages, and I think it is a very important book to read nowadays. As you have mentioned, all his words still ring a bell now, and we can. This is after 70 years, it means, and that's why we find that the young generation is appreciating, and the old generation are appreciating these poems, and we are having a lot of celebrations for him in all universities and schools, and studying his literature and trying to analyze it, and they feel that he is talking to them, and actually meant to talk to them.
I mean, let's look at maybe a sample of what you're talking about, Madame Shahina. I'm looking at some excerpts from his poems that apply to Beirut, to Lebanon, and also to the state of Arab politicians and in Beirut. If I may, let me read this little excerpt from one of his poems, and I would love to hear your reaction. Now, in this, he's addressing Arab politicians and leaders, and he says, deserts of despair lie ahead. Stand up and be doing again. No sands were watered by tears shed to yield a hopeful crop of grain. Never mind a shot fired astray, another the target may attain.
Yes.
Yesterday's dead, my friend. Drill today, tomorrow aim well and shoot again.
And
How do these lines reach you as his daughter and also as a faithful reader of his?
I think that by the time he was talking these words, we never understood exactly what he was saying as children we were. But nowadays, I feel every time that he was a visionary man, and I think his vision, it was exceptional to make him a unique poet. Actually, his uniqueness comes from his visionary poetry. So this is what we are. This is what we are. What state we are nowadays, as in this country, all around us. We are really we feel we don't feel safe. We feel that there was we needed to be more united, as I should say, more united to so we can aim well to our strategy, but we did not.
Yeah, and he almost knew
Unfortunately.
it. He almost felt it. Let me take another excerpt from one of my favorite poems. It's called Beirut, and here he reflected and said, "And so we gaze at our calamity, waiting for the world to give us a hand, but the world was cockeyed, deaf, and blind. Never mind, history will record the crime." Now, of course, he wrote this well before the current events in Lebanon, in Beirut. But it's almost as if he's addressing what's going on now in terms of the not only the tragedy itself, but the reaction of the world to it.
Yeah. Yes, this is very true. He had a steep knowledge in history. You know, he lived for a long time, and he had a steep sense for history, and so he actually he wrote many of his poetry is being addressed to how to live, to count on our hard work to build our countries, how to be honest, how to be humanitarian, how to be tolerant, how to be just, to not to ignore justice, and to be a good patriot. So he didn't find that we were doing this. He found that humanity is far away from our thinking. I mean, our governments, and he thought that life should be more. We should be more serious about our futures.
Absolutely, absolutely. Madame Shahina, you know, we had an event at Stanford before the corona and before the current crisis. And I know that you were supposed to join us. You were so kind as to send us the books. We had a beautiful poetic evening, a tribute to your late father, poet Jawdat Haydar. And one of the issues that, or one of the questions we kept getting is, you know, although your dad has obviously contributed a lot to Lebanese American literature, or Lebanese literature in English abroad and locally, there was always these questions about, you know, what about his writings in Arabic? And here I would like to say thank you, and I'm actually going to hold up the book. You sent me this beautiful book all the way from Lebanon the second you heard that question. And I have to tell everybody that it's such a special book because Madame Shahina autographed it herself to me. And I have been reading it, and sort of it opened up another world of Jawdat Haydar for me in terms of what he wrote in Arabic. You know, one of those, Madame Shahina, probably you are in the best position to shed light upon this, is this poem that he wrote for his son, whose name was Bassam.
Yeah.
So that would be your brother.
Yes. Yes, my brother.
So I've been reading all about Bassam, from his interest in racing and cars and mechanics, and it opened up a whole new world. Of course, it is always, always a tragedy when a father or a parent loses a child, you know. But yet, I think this poem that he wrote for Bassam, he decided to write that in Arabic.
Yes.
And not in English. Can you comment on that, as well as perhaps the relationship he had with his son Bassam, your
Yeah.
brother?
As I knew, and we were with him, of course, at that very, very sad event. He woke up in the night and he was talking to his son, actually. He did not, uh, his elegy was, you know, as if he was talking to him, he was saying something to him. Of course, this means that's why he wrote it in Arabic. That this is his mother tongue. So he came back to the Arabic language, being very emotional, a father being so furious about the death of his son, young son, and so I think that's why he started writing in Arabic, and since then he started writing in both languages, Arabic and English, though the majority was in English. But I think his writing in Arabic, I don't know, I think you have to comment about it.
In terms of the biographical info, we should mention that your late brother Bassam also had a son whose name, I guess, is Jawdat, after his
Yes,
grandfather. I guess he's better known as Jody, I heard. Is
yes,
that his
yes,
nickname?
yes.
So, I mean, it seems to me that your late father was so close with his son Bassam,
You are.
although their interests weren't necessarily similar. What can you tell us about your late brother Bassam, and his interests in life?
Bassam was real intellectual as well, and he studied history, but he was very much interested in mechanics, and he had good jobs in his life, and he had a quite a nice life with his family, his wife and children, uh, and the relation was very good because my father was, you know, a man of he would appreciate any hard work being done. If you aim at something and you do it, then he appreciates a lot. And he believed in diversity and in different interests as well, and he appreciated it. So they were really close together.
The poem, which I think is titled Wujudi La Wujud, is that the one?
This is the work, and Abeer Nemeh, the singer in Lebanon, artist, she sang this beautifully. Beautifully, she sang this poem, and I'll be sending it to you if you care to listen.
Absolutely, and with your permission and hers, we would love
Yeah.
to show our viewers a segment of that.
Yeah.
وشوش شواطئك الرملية يا بحر وشوش شواطئك الرملية يا بحر لو علمت ما بها لعلمت سر الوجود والخلود لو علمت ما بها لعلمت سر الوجود والخلود خذ من البحر عبرة وامشي على دروب الحياة حكيما في الوجود خذ من البحر عبرة وامشي على دروب الحياة حكيما في الوجود وخذ من الطبيعة أخرى ربيع وردة خلقت لتموت ربيع وردة خلقت لتموت ولولا قطرة الشتاء لا حياة لا ربيع لا وجود
There's also, Madame Shahina, I mean, a poem called A Shelter of Tears, which is in memory of my son Bassam, which he wrote. And I was trying to compare it to the Arabic poem that we heard, Abeer Nemeh singing, but they're different, aren't they? I mean, it's not a translation of the Arabic, is it?
Translated. He never translated. Actually, that's why his poetry is so natural and so there is creativity in it because it is never translated. His thoughts, when he is writing English, he never thinks in Arabic. And when he is writing in Arabic, he doesn't think in English. So this was very true about him.
There is this line in the Arabic, which I would love to get your reaction about. it ends, I think, the poem, يا زماني ماتت وردتي
Yeah.
وأنا تراني ذاهلا
Below.
في وجدي لا وجود في وجدي لا وجود. How do we translate that?
But he is completely gone. His spirit is no more with him, you know.
This word wajd, right?
Yeah.
Playing on the word wajd, wujud, and wujud. Of course,
Yeah.
you know, wujud as in existence, fi wajdi la wujud. And the very title is wujudi la wujud. Such an amazing use of the Arabic language with words that may come from the same root grammatically, but have different meanings.
He uses this often. Often he uses words that mean, you know, the same word meaning different in different meaning.
خذ من البحر عبرة
وامشي
وامشي يا صاح على دروب الحياة حكيما في الوجود. الوجود again. This whole idea about existing and coexisting, almost existentialist in some sense. What is the sense you get when you, I mean, I noticed you were actually reading along with me.
Yeah.
Do you remember this line? Are you able to read this line for us?
I think that Jawdat Haydar was very concerned about birth, life, death, العدم. I don't know what is in English. العدم.
Is it the lack or the?
العدم والوجود. يعني this was some of the subjects that he wrote about.
In terms of existence and non-existence,
yeah, existence
or
and
what?
Exactly.
Because this seems to really be a theme that recurs in his poetry in Arabic and in English. Just one more before I move on to something else, Madame Shahina. شريط الحياة وجود لا خلود.
Exactly. This is his philosophy. There is no khulud.
There is no eternity in the sense of staying. You know, we will all perish.
We come here, but not to stay for long.
Exactly. Sharit al-Haya. I mean, it's so difficult to translate that into maybe the thread of life. Sharit al-Haya, wujud la khulud, meaning we exist, but not eternally. And does that poem, does that line, does that verse not remind us of Gibran, أعطني الناي وغني وانسى داء ودواء إنما الناس سطور كتبت لكن بماء أو عن الخلود. This whole idea of it, does that seem to be very Gibran-like to you?
I find that Jawdat Haydar is more modern in tone and subjects than Gibran.
Of course, because of course your father also, you know, lived well after Gibran. But there is a poem that he wrote called Gibran, Kahlil Gibran.
Yes, he wrote.
Which is included in the beautiful collection we've been talking about, 101 select poems. And I'm wondering about, you know, that poem.
Actually, Gibran Khalil Gibran, actually, Jawdat Haydar acknowledged all writers and was in favor to like conversing with them, trying to talk with them. He acknowledged them all and knew very well what they were writing about and what did they and how did they write. So I'm not surprised that he would write for Kahlil Gibran, which he admired his book, The Prophet.
Really?
He admired the Prophet very well, and he told him, "And a prophet you made."
But it's so moving to see your late father sort of acknowledge Gibran, and then, as you said, move even beyond Gibran in some ways to address, because of course also your father, I mean, he lived most of his life in Lebanon.
Yes.
Yeah, whereas Gibran, I think, lived most of his life at least outside of Lebanon. And before I move to my favorite poem, and here I'm taking the liberty of choosing one only because you, Madame Shahina, told me you wanted me to choose one. And I did choose one, and I would love to end with it. But before I move to that, I just want to give you a chance to talk to us about your late father's legacy. Every time you and I have spoken to check in with each other, there's been some event, some commemoration going on in Lebanon and elsewhere for your dad. Can you perhaps share with us some of the new events or tributes that have been happening for your late father, Jawdat Haydar?
Yes, of course. The latest one was at the United Nations, where they read the poem Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, by Jawdat Haydar at the United Nations. The curator of the Islamic art at the New York Museum Metropolitan, she addressed Jawdat Haydar and talked a bit about him and how there is the similarity between Gandhi and Mahatma and Jawdat Haydar in being humanitarian, in being thinking of nonviolence. It was their first article in their life, and being both loved nature, and they were writers, and they wanted justice. All this peace, all these things. How they are
interlinked, perhaps.
Yes, together. And we had this in Lebanon also at the Lebanese American University, where they said where there was a about Jawdat Haydar and Gandhi meeting of minds, and we had round table, and we had 5 professors talking about this.
Wow.
Then we had at Oxford University the World Literature Society at Oxford University invited us to have a seminar, Jawdat Haydar, a call for tolerance and cohesion. This was very successful, and we had a good attendance. Then we had at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., a professor from Syracuse University made a talk, and we had good attendance, and it was written everywhere. We had so many in New York, at the LAU, Washington again, the worldwide alumni of AUB, and also there was an event celebrated his work and his life with the consulate in New York, Lebanese consulate, and with the embassy in Washington. And we had at Alexandria Library in Alexandria. There was a very good event that commemorated his life and his work. As well, we had the best Ahmed Abdelmout Hijazi and all this who came and talked about Jawdat Haydar, who knew him actually, Ahmed Abdelmout Hijazi, when Jawdat Haydar returned the statue of the poet Kahlil Gibran in Baalbek. This is because he believed in diversity and coexistence. So he invited many of the Arab poets to Baalbek to celebrate the return of the poet Kahlil Gibran to his entrance of Baalbek. Every year we have at all the universities in Lebanon, they commemorate his
legacy.
His legacy.
Wow. I even hear, there's these efforts now to also make him a permanent part of the curriculum for students to read.
It had been before he passed away. His poem, the temple in Baalbek, it was incorporated in the curriculum of the baccalaureate, Lebanese baccalaureate, before he passed away. And now this poem is featured at the entrance of the temple museum in the temple of Baalbek, with the history of Baalbek.
That is so amazing, and it's such an experience, Madame Shahina, to speak to you about your father. It's an emotional, very special moment when you have the child of a poet with the stature of your late father share with us her opinions and her feelings about her late father. It just gains a new dimension when we hear it from someone who grew up with him, who knew him. And it's such an honor to hear that he was just as lovely a father as he was a poet in terms of his contributions. Madame Shahina, would you like me to read the poem that I chose?
Yes, please do.
I don't know if you're going to be surprised, but it's the same poem that I chose to read when we had the Stanford event. And we, of course, gave you a salutation. You weren't able to come at that point all the way from Lebanon, but we felt like you were with us. And I felt this poem might be applicable because it is my honor to call you also a friend now, because through the time we have been communicating, I think a friendship has been born. And so I'm going to dedicate the poem to you, Madame Shahina. It is called To a Friend.
Thank you.
So for our readers, this poem comes from the collection 101 Selected Poems by Jawdat Haydar. I also have to say that Rima Jawdat Haydar signed this book for me. Did you know this?
Yes.
And so
my sister.
So now I have two books, one from Shahina signed in Arabic and one from Rima signed in English. They're among my prized possessions.
Well, in 2016, we had two books. The Jawdat Haydar's Poetic Legacy, Issues of Modernity, yes, of modern. Yeah, and we had Jawdat Haydar, The Voice from Baalbek by John Monroe. Exactly. Yes.
So, I mean, I seem to be surrounded by your father's books today, which is a beautiful feeling. And those seem to be more widely available right now for those listeners who would like to learn more.
We have the trilogy, Voices, Echoes, and Shadows. Also, they are in the libraries in Lebanon. And the French, the one that is the bilingual, the one that is translated to French as well.
Because your late father, who wrote in English and in Arabic, didn't really write in French. The French is a translation of some of his work.
Translation, exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Translation.
So I again want to just tell everybody that this collection, Jawdat Haydar, Mswar al-Umar, is available, and that's the one that Madame Shahina sent me. For those people who want to read more about his Arabic works, they're compiled beautifully in this gorgeous volume. Madame Shahina, as I prepare to say ma'as-salama and thank you for your presence today all the way from Lebanon, I'd like to dedicate this poem to all friends, to friendships that are born every day, to friends who have come and gone, but to the eternal concept of friends. So with your permission, I'm going to read this poem which your late father Jawdat Haydar wrote in 1984. It is called To a Friend. And before doing so, to say shukran and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a great pleasure. Thank you.
I hope I do him justice, Madame Shahina, but I'll end with this poem. To a friend. Why look far away into the no end when you can't view a hill beyond your sight? Better look within your limits, my friend, to distinguish the black from the white. Walk the distance aloud, within reason, and be lidless in your expedition. Your hopes may star during a good season, yet may be the highway to perdition. Look how the years fly and we miss the glare. Look how a child grows on the ash of days. Look at the mirror of life and be aware of the gloom ahead and the spreading haze. So, why look away into the no end? When you're still featherless, should you pretend? Thank
Thank
you,
you.
my.
Thank you.
It's just it's very emotional to read this to the own poet's daughter while we have you live here through the magical technology of Zoom. It is my hope, Madame Shahina, that we get to host you one day in person at Stanford, and for our paths to meet, inshallah, بلبنان أو بأمريكا أو بأي مطرح تاني. Thank you so much for your beautiful presence today and for giving us the time and your generous gifts of books and tributes to your father.
Thank you. Thank you very much.